Hi everyone, welcome to Dynamic Modeling of Cities. You're with Matt. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up and animate a series of dynamic balconies like these for daylight analysis. I'm going to use a few Tyflo modifiers, so I need to install the plugin first. So I'm just going to head to the Tyflo download page, click accept, and then download this file here. So here's one I've downloaded earlier. I can just copy this file here. Make sure you get the version number that matches your 3ds Max program. Once I've copied that, I can hold shift and right click on my Max icon here and open the file location. Then I can scroll up to plugins. I just simply need to paste that file here, just press continue, and that should be installed. So jumping into 3ds Max, here you can see I've got one that I've set up earlier. It's hooked up to the animation, so you can see the glazing planes are bending and the cutout for the balcony is changing. And I'll just show you how I've set that up using a few modifiers and some other bendy parameters. So I've just jumped into a new 3ds Max file. I'm just going to head straight to the top view here and select under shapes. I'm going to use a rectangle spline. Just turn my snaps on so I can snap to the grid and just click and drag. I'm just going to change these parameters here to 9 meters and 4 meters width. I'm going to rename that rectangle and I'm going to rename it driver spline. And in brackets, I'm just going to put room. So now that I've got that, I'm going to clone it. I'm going to use reference. And I'm going to rename that floor. And in brackets R, so I know that it's connected or referencing that room. I'm just going to clone it once again. This time I'm going to use ceiling. Okay, so then for the floor and the ceiling, you could just do another copy an instance of the floor to create the ceiling, but I wanted to keep them separate so I can give them different thicknesses. And I'm going to give that floor a different thickness, and I'm just going to jump to the Modifier tab and add an extrusion. And let's just give it 500 mil, half a meter. And then the ceiling, I'm going to move that up 3.2 meters. And I'm going to give that an extrusion as well. Okay, so we've got a bit of a room shape here now. The fourth thing we're going to do now is the wall spline. What I'm going to do is copy this one more time as a reference. I'm just going to rename that wall. Select that spline, and I'm going to add a spline select and drop this down and click segment. I'm going to click this front one here, and then I'm going to add another one called delete spline. And then I'm going to add a extrusion, 3.2 meters. The next one I'm going to add is a shell. So I can give that wall some thickness, 250 mil thick. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, just to make it a bit easier to see through, is select the ceiling and go to Objects Parameters and just check this see-through here. Leave the other settings for now and just hit that there so we can kind of see inside the room. I'm going to jump back to this top view here in wireframe. I'm just going to create a new layer and call it glazing. And I'm going to take all these out into a new layer and call it room. I'm going to put the driver back into default. So once I've got my layers tidied up, create another driver, and this time it's going to be a box. So I'm going to head over to geometry and under standard perimeter select box. So you can see it just sitting inside there. I'm just going to modify those again, 2.7 meters. The width I'm going to make 4.5, and the length I'm going to make 0.04. Nice if I typed it. And then I'm just going to move that up by the half a meter from the floor thickness. So it's just nestling nicely in the box there, and it sticks out a little bit, which is fine. Okay, so once we've got the box in there, our driver box, I'm just going to select it here, and I'm going to move it. Oh, just fix up my snaps here and enable this access constraints and turn off the rubber band. Select that box again, and I'm just going to move that until it snaps to the face there. We're just going to select the glazing driver again, and I'm just going to turn on the absolute mode for a second and just move that by 2.2 meters back in. That way I can get some precise measurements of where it's sitting. Okay, so from there I'm just going to put this back up into the default, and I'm going to rename that one as well. The driver box glazing. Clone it again as a reference, and I'm going to do that twice. So once I've got these two copies, I'm just going to drag them into the glazing layer here. Okay, so once that's set up, we're just going to grab the frame, just select the frame over here in the Explorer, and under the Modifier tab, I'm going to add a lattice. And you can see here it's giving us a frame around the driver box. I'm just going to do struts only, and down here in the options we can change the diameter a little bit if you want. Maybe do 30 mil. So once we've got that frame, I'm just going to select the glass. It's picked up the thickness from the driving box, so it's 40 mil thick down here. So with that selected, I'm just going to go to my slate material editor. I'm just going to right click here and select some V-Ray materials. I'm just going to create a glass material really quickly. And just move that across and use this little node to just select onto the glass. So once the material is applied, I'm just going to add a few more mullions to the window there. I'm just going to select that driver box and just add some width segments. I'm just going to select and add 4. So I want to add a bit of a bend to this glazing line. Select that driver box and add a TyBend modifier. You see there, if I bend it there, it's kind of doing a bit of a sideways stretch or bend. So I'm just going to switch this over into 90 degrees and select the axis, and that should give us the bend back and forth. So I've allowed the window to go into the wall thickness a little bit just so we can keep it closed. Maybe graphically it's not ideal, but for analysis this is kind of important. You can always put a internal thickness or inner amount on the wall if you want to use that adjustment instead. Okay, so once our glazing is in place, the next thing we need to create is our Boolean cutouts. I'm going to create another driver under the Shapes tab. I'm going to select Ellipse. Just going to click and drag here, get my rough shape. Just delete that one that I accidentally made. I'm going to select that into the driver box as well. I'm going to rename that driver ellipse. Okay, so I'm going to make another clone and a reference of that. Then I'm going to create a new layer for that. Just call it cutout. Okay, so the reason I've done that is just so I can give an extrusion onto this one. So I'm just going to apply a modifier, extrude, and I'm just going to give it 5 meters. So now I can hide this driver ellipse, but I can also change the parameters of it, and it won't hide when I've got the ellipse selected. It won't hide the extrusion, so I can kind of see the changes that I'm making live. Okay, so now that it's in place and it's intersecting with the ceiling and the floor, I'm just going to select that floor and add another modifier called TyBoolean. I'm just going to use this pick button here and select the ellipse, and then scroll down and change the operation to A minus B. So you'll find that the ellipse is still here, so I can now select my ceiling and repeat the same modifier. Okay, so once that's cutting out, you can go back to the driver ellipse. Again, you can play with these width and height parameters to change that cutout. Okay, so now you can use your drivers to kind of reset some of these parameters. And what I'm going to do is just set up a little bit of an animation here. So I'm just going to turn on my auto keyframes. And I'm just going to slide this forward, maybe 20 frames in. Select this, and I'm just going to put in 50. Another 20, maybe go to 50 this time. And I'm going to type in 90. And then I'm going to come back. I'm just going to progressively add that. You'll see that these keyframes are adding in black down here. And I'm just going to keep adjusting this back and forth. So if I was to slide that, you'll see that it bends a little bit. You can do the same thing with the ellipse cutout. So this might add some length and width. So now if I play that, you'll see that we've got a bit of a dynamic animation happening between our balcony and our glazing line. Okay, so you can also, if you want to move or add a movement to any of the geometry, say you want that ellipse or cutout to move further in, I'll just go to my drive out, my cutout, and I'll go to this one here, which is just the ellipse geometry. So just rename that so we know. I'll just move that in like there. Then this one we might move slowly out. Now we're getting a bit of a movement back and forth with the balcony. Once we've set up our dynamic balcony cutout and glazing line, we could set this up for a render analysis in V-Ray like my previous video, or we could do a quicker version using the Arnold active shader. So again, what I'll do is just quickly set up that environment here with the pseudo color exposure. That's already set to 10,000. And then what I'll do is quickly put in a V-Ray sun. Looks pretty good. I'm just going to move that target. And then I might just modify this sun so it's not so bright. Yep. I'm going to turn off that ceiling. I'm just going to switch on this active shade using Arnold. So it's a little bit grainy and a little bit laggy, but it gives you a pretty quick live feedback of any adjustments you want to make in the model in regards to kind of sun exposure or light exposure onto the floor surface. So there you have it. That's a bit of a dynamic glazing and balcony. Give you some pretty quick feedback using the Arnold active shader.